Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we'll do a video that I wanted to do quite a while ago, and basically is to talk about why Symbaroum is better than D&D. And actually it's not the exact subject of this video. It's more, all people that play D&D, myself included, we all have little irritants or little things about the game that maybe niggle at us, and Symbaroum solves most of the things that I care less for in D&D. But it's just that in my life it has the same role as D&D has for many people, because it's a D20 system. It has a lot of similarities to D&D. There's something like advantage, disadvantage, even though it's not named like that. There's a fair deal of epicness. Players become pretty powerful, PCs, so the power level gets really high. I'll just go sit over there just so I can have some peace and quiet. It's a bit more busy than in Dark Davokar. Okay, so let's get to it. I will talk about what I like about Symbaroum, why it's better than D&D. And at the end, I might tell you also why it's not as good as D&D, because on certain aspects, D&D is a better game, and I'll talk about those things at the end of the video. So first of all, what I like about Symbaroum and what I think is a weakness of D&D. Everybody is expecting maybe that I talk about the setting first, because the setting is really what makes Symbaroum stand apart. It's a setting-specific system. So that means that the whole system is geared towards one very precise experience in one campaign world, and one could even say to play a printed specific campaign. So a bit like Ravenloft, you can tailor some rules, tailor some aspects of the game to the setting to make it stronger, to make the setting shine through. But I won't talk about the setting first, because the system of Symbaroum is a very simple OSRE system, a bit like basic D&D, but it's very freeform, and it's not like tied to the setting as much as some people would want it to. It's a bit more wide open than that. You can play many different styles of campaigns in that setting, and the rules are wide enough and general enough that it will hold its own pretty well, I think. So let's talk about what itches me the wrong way in D&D and what I think Symbaroum does better. First of all, it's fewer hit points. The hit point bag problem is gone. It's so much gone that as we play, a lot of people have started giving big boss battles, giving some extra hit points to those monsters. Because in Symbaroum, if you take just the core rule book, all characters have between 10 and 15 hit points. With some special attributes, you could go up to 18, and with special monster trait, you could go to 36, like tops. 36 is pretty good, but 36 is like, I don't know, third level character in D&D. And the thing that I really don't like in D&D, and that is not a problem in Symbaroum, is that as you level up in D&D, your hit points go up, your damage output goes up, and so does the damage output and hit points of monsters, which means you get the same thing, just more complex math. That is really bad design. It's like, okay, let's make the math more complex, but the end result is the same. Like, how many hits does it take to down an enemy? And that is, I don't know, you can't take that out of D&D. But that is definitely not something that makes D&D fun for me. And in Symbaroum, you don't get that. As you level up, you can't really raise your hit points that much. Your damage output can get much bigger. Your armor values can get much bigger. But it's not at the scale that you have in D&D. And it still keeps you quite vulnerable to certain, poison attacks and stuff like that will hurt you as much, even if you have 500 XPs, than a starting character with 50 XPs. So that's one big plus. And tied to the hit point thing is the fights. The fights are super quick. I've run some pretty long fights in Symbaroum, I must admit, but I had 7 PCs with 3 allies against 35 enemies of different kinds. So, of course, if you do a major battle like that, it's going to take a long time, even in Symbaroum. But the actual actions of one player when you play your turn, you attack, you defend, you move, you do whatever you want. It's really quick, and you don't have like 500,000 rules to look up all the time. You do have some. It's not as light as other games because the characters have abilities and powers that are very diverse. So you have some system mastery involved. I have to say that. But each rule is pretty simple. There's not like 12 different kinds of damages and 3 different kinds of planes of existence, and it's more simple. The backdrop of the game stays simple. So those extra rules that you need to learn for your character are not that hard to learn. I mean, for the GM, it's pretty tough because you have many characters that all have abilities, and that's we'll get back to that later on. The other thing that is not a flaw of D&D at all, but that personally I don't like as much, is the class system in D&D. And Symbaroum is an open class system, which means that there are some abilities that will be reserved to people that have taken previous abilities. So it's not really an ability tree, but there's a few limitations that you can put in. There's a few special professions like the Queen's Spy or stuff like that, but that's in-setting. It's an in-setting job that has a special treatment in the rules, but it's not a class. In Symbaroum, when you create your character, you can be what you want. You can choose any abilities that you want. You can combine whatever you want in any manner you want, which is really great if players have a specific character concept in their mind and they want to build something and be creative about it. It's a super good system for that. It's great. Of course, you need to tie it to the setting. You need to give the explanations to why you would have this or that mix of abilities. But that's the joy of it. That's the fun of it, to create these characters. For beginning GMs and beginning players, maybe it's a bit much. The class system has very clear roles for players, so that helps newbies. In Symbaroum, you do have archetypes, which are like classes in a way, but they're much more open, and it's just suggestions. It's not even a rule. It's just, you want to be a ranger, this is what you should choose for abilities. It's like a menu. But in the end, you take what you want. The leveling system is much more interesting in my sense, because you can create your character following a concept, and then as you make the character grow, when you earn experience, you can level up your abilities. Each ability has 3 levels, and you can buy new abilities. And those abilities are so varied that you can really, after a while of playing your character, you decide that this character has a change of heart or wants to become something that you didn't envision in the beginning, and you can. You can have a mercenary warrior that becomes a wizard. You can really do what you want. So that, I think for the players, it's heaps of fun. So that's a big plus. Another point that I really like, it's a loose and flexible system. D&D and D&D 1, I guess, is probably going in that direction. A lot of hardcore AD&D players that really like tons of tables about everything might not like it, because it means that the DM has to make rulings based on the circumstances of the game and has to decide what will be rolled. Is it a saving throw? Is it a skill check? Is it an attack? Is it whatever? An ability check? So in Symbaroum, it's the same thing. The system is really simple. You roll a d20, you add a modifier that the GM tells you to. It's either the opposing party's strength or weakness. It's either the situation. And you succeed or fail based on that. The abilities will give maybe some detail or some special effects to that failure or that success. But the basic of the system is super simple. It's very OSRE in its spirit. It's really just, let's decide on odds throw a die and see if you succeed. I really like that as a GM because I can adapt to whatever the PCs throw at me. This kind of system that's very light, very flexible, gives me power as a GM to really play with the probabilities of whatever happens, to keep the level of harshness of the world that you want. Like if you want a world that is super harsh with a lot of failure and you use fail forward techniques, then you will put more negative modifiers in general. It's like a DM style, if you want. It's your style of campaign. And if you're more on the lenient side, or you're playing with younger players and you want to be a bit easier on them, you can easily manage the difficulty like that. So I really like that it's loose and flexible. The downside to that is that you have to make rulings on the fly all the time. There's not a rule for everything in this game, far from that. There are quite a few, like of the most essential ones, but you will need to do rulings on the fly, and you need to be consistent with those rulings. You need to be confident in your rulings, and you need to know how to keep the players happy and keep the game fun. So it does put some responsibility onto you as DM. I have one last point that I want to talk about that I really like about Symbaroum, and that I think makes it superior to D&D for me, is the setting. The setting has a lot of adult themes. Not meaning any extra gore or flirtiness or none of that. It's not that. It's just the stakes, the conflicts, the NPCs, the backstories of the NPCs. It's written by adults for adults, and you can feel it. There's much more depth to most NPCs. The art is wonderful. It really evokes a magical setting. For those who don't know what Symbaroum is, the designers said it's Game of Thrones meets Princess Mononoke. So it's like the magical forest with the fantastical beasts meets power politics, gritty deaths, and dark magics. And it has a very strong exploration pillar because there's a huge forest called Davokar with ruins of an empire called Symbaroum that existed back in the day 1,000 years ago. And being a fortune hunter or a treasure hunter, and going in the forest and trying to find treasures of the forest is like the main trope of this game. But there's so much more to it. You have a whole kingdom with every county and duchy is described, and there's really very intense power politics involved. And if I want to be more specific, the way the books of the game have some problems, in the sense that this is the first version of the game, so they developed the game as they were writing the campaign, so you get some extra rules and stuff all over the place. So if you don't want to buy a ton of books, then you go on the Discord server and you speak with the people that know the game well, like myself and many others, and they'll help you out on that. But the one thing that they do really good in the books, and that I haven't seen elsewhere yet, is that you always have a first part of the book with some player oriented information for most of the books. So maybe it's some setting description, maybe it's some I don't know, some ideas on this or that, and then you have the game master section right after that, where it talks about the same elements, but it tells you the secrets. It's the what really happened section. So you've got things that the players can read that are actually lies, or not lies, or half-truths. And you as GM, you know what's underlying this stuff. And so the players can really explore this setting, and they know they're going to find things that will wow them, or that will go, oh, holy shit, that's what's going on. And so this aspect of really having a clear secret part for the GM to read is just very, very simple to do, and very useful, because it gives you so much ammunition as a DM to really spice things up in this game. The setting is really one of the best out there. You need to like that kind of dark forest, witches. The witches are like Viking witches, you know. It's all the barbarians of the forest are like a bit Viking-y tribes, and you also have the medieval kingdom from the southern portion of this world that is more classic medieval, but it has a lot of flavor, and it's very, very rich. So now the things that I think D&D does better than Symbaroum. D&D is definitely a more structured game. It has, it has clear limitations and walls. The rules are made that, if you read a rule, most of the time it's pretty clear what are the limitations of this or that power or feat. Some are less well written, but nothing compared to Symbaroum. Symbaroum has many abilities that are written in a way that can be interpreted in multiple ways. So once the players have made their characters, the GM has to go through their abilities with them, and you need to sort of pre-house rule. Like, you need to talk about the abilities and what the player thinks they will be able to do with them, and what you think they should be able to do with them. That's the thing. And some abilities and powers in Symbaroum are completely OP, like really game-breaking OP. They've been noted by the people that know the game very well. So there's like easy tweaks that you can make to those powers, or you can ban them outright. But if you just buy the game and play yourself and you're not aware of that, it might bite you in the ass, as we say. It might be a problem. The loose and flexible system for character creation is not necessarily a plus. A lot of people really like the class system. They like to have a very clear guidance of what my character is, what it can do, and you can look at what the next levels will give you as abilities, and you sort of have a very clear roadmap of where you're going. And for many people, that's fine. That's what they want. So Symbaroum does not have that. Like, if you want to give that to your players, you would have to make pre-generated characters for them, because the system doesn't support a more structured character creation method. It's very, very open. It's made to be open, and I don't see how you could simplify it that much. For beginners, the solution in Symbaroum is pre-generated characters. Talk with them what kind of character they want. Are you a barbarian? Are you an Ambrian knight? Are you what are you seeing in your mind? And then, as a GM that has a rule mastery, you can create a PC for them, and you can just say, hey, here's an ability list that I chose for you. Let's go through it. If some things you don't really like, we'll remove them, put something else in. So you need to be with them to create their characters, and it'll be fine. But yeah, you can't just tell people, make your character and come next week, we'll play. The other thing that D&D does really well is like the almost superheroic, fantastical, multiplanar epicness. There is a bit of multiplanar. It's very, very minimal, but there is a bit of multiplanar elements in Symbaroum. But they're very few and far between. It's not places where you can go adventure. Not really. Maybe for very short. It's like scuba diving. Like, if you go to those places, you're in immediate danger and you need to leave real fast. So that there's that. You don't get that level of epicness, but you do have that wonder about there are other planes that exist. There are things mysterious that are out there, and you have that in Symbaroum. It's just not a major part of the game. Maybe in higher levels you might get a bit more into it if your GM is into that also, but for the most part you won't really be in contact with that when you play Symbaroum. Another thing that D&D does better, and I'll end with that, is that D&D is more generic, and so it has a wider palette of possible worlds. There are many games that have been tailored for the 5e rules, and Symbaroum as well. So I want to keep this for the end, because I still think you should try the OG rules. But they did do an adaptation for it's called Ruins of Symbaroum, and it's for the 5e system. and I've heard very good things about it. So if you want to stay in 5e but still explore Symbaroum, you can try that out. So there it is. That's why Symbaroum is better than D&D, at least for my table. For you it may vary, but it's definitely a very interesting game, very unique game that does have some of that D&D flavor to it, meaning that there is some epic gameplay to be had there. There is the D20 system that people like so much. So there are like the pillars of social exploration, combat are pretty much all there. I would say that they're more like in D&D, combat is very more present than the two other pillars. In Symbaroum it's much more equal. So there you go. That's Symbaroum for me, and that's why I chose Symbaroum to be my D&D. So please, if you like this video, well, keep on watching some of my other videos of my GM prep, my efficient GM prep, where I try to prep 1 hour for 4 hours of play in the game Symbaroum. You might find it interesting. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, a comment, that would be really great. And there you go. See you in the next one.